is, I think, immensely supported by the data. The specific discrepancy that I think was, however, greatly embellished and exaggerated to the point of constituting a real problem for our societal ability to wrestle with the reality and the complexity of what was happening, is the idea that police killings of African Americans were much greater than they in fact are, right? Now, just a couple of sort of data points on that. Washington Post had a report some years back looking at available data from the municipal and the federal level and so forth, and came to the conclusion that, I forget the specific year, but it was 2018, 19, or 20. It was in that range, that you had somewhere between 9 and 15 unarmed African Americans killed by police in a given year. More African Americans in total, but in terms of unarmed African Americans, between about 9 and 15, and only about 1,000 or so Americans killed by police, period, within that same year. But if you look at polling data in terms of what most people, particularly more folks who are more self-identified, progressive and so forth, what they believed was true in terms of annual shooting deaths of African Americans by police in a given year, about 39% of people believed it was upwards of 1,000, right?
Most definitely.
Right, exactly. And so, now I actually happen to believe that 9 in a year figure is probably not correct. There's probably more.
It is
than
incorrect.
That. Well, I'm sure that it is, because there's a lot that needs to be improved in terms of how we collect data, and you always have to allow for the possibility of things being covered up, right? So I'm not trying to be naive about it. At the same time, though, I don't believe that it's anywhere near the thousands in a given year. But because people believed that it was in the thousands in a given year, it became relatively common for people to speak in terms of the genocide of young Black men by police, right? And so, look, if I actually believed that there was a genocide that was taking place against Black people in America, I would probably be acting much more extreme myself in response to that. I mean, when you think about it against that backdrop, it's sort of understandable that certain people reacted the way that they did. But that's exactly the problem, because there is a problem. So there's I don't know if you're familiar with a researcher named Roland Fryer, Black man out of Harvard. He embedded himself in about 5 different police departments across the country. And I forget which ones exactly. One was Houston, one might have been Philly. So he was across a geographic range. And he looked at and observed in real time their data collection process. He reviewed their internal records. He had personal relationships with the cops and the community. And he came away with the assessment that there's really not much in terms of racially differentiated occurrences of police homicide towards African Americans, where cops are actually killing Black people at rates disproportionate to that of whites, if you factor in the increased rate of police encounters, because there are more violent crimes in inner city communities. And again, putting aside the historical reasons why. But he did notice the very thing I said up front, or just a moment ago, which is that in terms of just casual, sort of harassment, frisking, throwing a man on the hood of a police car, physically abusive sorts of engagements during the ordinary course of policing, ordinary police interactions with Black people tended to be significantly more violent on a statistical level than what you had with Black people policing in white areas, and particularly suburban communities and so forth.